Hi, welcome back. In our previous session, we started seeing how to create views with the calligraphy framework. We learned about the PUG language, and more precisely, the FUG language, which is really a PHP version of PUG. And we started seeing how we could create UIs or user interface for the different components that we want to build. Now, as I mentioned previously, this course is not a design course per se, and the calligraphy framework, despite the fact that it supports very powerful ways to create themes and to create new visual templates. As part of this course, we are not going to learn necessarily how to do that, but we are rather going to use the default theme that is provided by Calligraphy out of the box, even if we don't necessarily like the visuals of it, since the purpose of the course is not necessarily the visual appeal of what we're creating, but rather the ability to create forms and to create pages that would allow us to interface with the backend database. So we are going to continue a little bit what we started last time, but in the session today we are going to focus more on really our application. So the mini portfolio application that we're creating together and that we call Showcase, and we are going to start building some user interface pages, some graphical user interface to really interface with the controllers that we created, and that would kind of give you a 360 view on what can be done with calligraphy. So let's go and start looking into our lecture for the day. When I hit get started, we are gonna look mainly today on lecture 10, okay, which is going to be forms and validation. So in the beginning of the session, we are going to start to create pages. We're probably going to create maximum three pages. One of them is going to be a UI for seeing all the projects that were posted. Another one, and that might be a combined one depending on the level of difficulty of it, is going to be a form, and that form is going to allow us to do three things. It's going to allow us to create, it's going to allow us to edit, and it's going to allow us to delete. So I'm just bringing the bar up high a little bit, despite the fact that we could have done them in three separate pages or three separate forms. I want it to be slightly more challenging. So we are going to combine one page, one form that would allow us to do all these three functionalities. And if everything goes smoothly from there, we are going to talk about how we are able to do validation with Calligraphy. Okay, Calligraphy comes prepackaged out of the box with a validation third-party tool called GUMP, which we mentioned in previous sessions. But today we are probably going to see it more in action. And if we don't have enough time to go through the validation, I am not much worried about it, because when we talk about authentication, we are going to see it live in action. So now with that said, let's go to the lecture for today, and everything that I will be mentioning today will be in this reference page, but we are going to spend most of our time in the code as opposed to the reference itself. So let's open up the code where we left off yesterday. We were really playing with the views folder over here, and we learned about the default theme that is provided to us by Calligraphy. We talked about the master pages that are provided to us, and this is how we learned about inheritance that is part of PUG. Also, we learned about inclusions, about interpolations, and about the conditionals. So today we are going to make use of all of this, but the concentration is really going to be on building the page, okay? And if you remember well, in the last session I asked you maybe to go through the documentation of Pug, so I hope you got a chance to do that. And I was also mentioning that it would be interesting to go through the style.css that is provided by Caligraphy out of the box. Why? Because today is really when I'm going to be using specifically some of the classes that are defined in there. So in order for you to really follow and to really understand, I'll try to explain as I am writing the code, because I'm quite familiar with style.css since I built it myself. But sometimes, you know, it's good for you to have it as a reference and to keep referring to it whenever you want. Okay, every once in a while I might come to this file to verify certain properties or certain classes from there, but otherwise it's going to be quite straightforward, and I'll be coding, and while I'm coding I will explain maybe what each of the classes that I'm using, how it would impact the page that we're building. So the first page that we looked at, or that we built together in the last session, we called it index.pug, sorry, but it was in the showcase, so it's this index.pug. And if you remember well, every page that we built from this point on, we wanted to inherit master, and more precisely the layout blocks of master. Okay, now since the layout blocks of master also inherits the layout pug, so if you look at layout blocks, it extends layout. So that means our page that we're creating has this particular layout along with the blocks as defined by the layout blocks file. Great. So everything that we need to do really needs to happen within the context of the one of the blocks that is defined in layout blocks, which is block content. Okay, and most of the effort today is going to be in building those pages. Now, one thing that we want to do, just go back to the controller in order to link these things together. Last time we created a page controller, and what that page controller does is really just, you know, was showing you how to return a particular view. Okay, now this we don't need it today anymore. We're going to replace everything by our project controller. We're going to let our project controller handle all these all the data that we're going to be receiving. And the first page that we're going to be creating, which is going to be hopefully our index page, is really the list of all the projects that we have in the database. So if I go to project controller over here, instead of saying I want to dump my project, what I'm going to do ultimately is I'm going to return the view, and that view will be index. Okay, so we're going to work on index right now in terms of layout, and then whenever we want to start testing it, we will go into the controller to give it the right data. Now, that being said, last time we added in our web.php, we added this route called test template. This we can remove for the time being. We are not going to use it. Okay. Now, just to make sure that our system is still working, we're going to go to localhost/showcase and press enter. If you remember, our index does return an array of the projects that were that have been created. Okay, so far we only have one project. We will add as we go in order to see how our display is behaving. I will also open my admin, so PHP my admin. Why? Because probably initially we want to test out some text or some URLs, so we need to test some of the data and changing it. So instead of doing it through the code, we can change it directly in PHP my admin by the time we build the forms. So let's go to showcase, and then let's go to our projects, and this is the info that we need, at least at this stage of the game. All right, so now let's go back to our code and let's start. So I'll go to index.pug, which is again the wrong one. That's the one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete everything except for the spacer, which we need because that spacer is giving us a little bit of margin for our content to appear on the page. page. So we'll leave that one. Now the first thing we're going to do, our content under the bar calligraphy that that you see in here, which you don't see anymore, but that's okay. So we'll get back to it when we see it. We need to add a wrapper, okay? And there is a class called wrapper in the styles.css, and what that wrapper is just a big container that will contain in this particular case, it will contain all the projects that we have. Now that container, we need to restrict its size so that when we enlarge it and we make it very, very big, perhaps we can give it a max. And there is another class in styles.css that says, you know, bound it to a large size. And then we want margins to be equally spaced, so we want all of our elements to have the same paddings, you know, around this wrapper. So there's yet another class called equally spaced one that would allow us to do this. And then once we've done this, now we need to add another class called content section, which really now defines the content container of the projects, and it has, you know, certain paddings and margins that are already established for us. Great. So now that we have this set, if you are not familiar with Bootstrap, I'm going to talk about some notions that the Bootstrap CSS you know, has. So as I mentioned earlier, the Bootstrap allows us to create some fluid designs, and the way it works is it kind of divides your screen into 12 columns, and among each of the columns there is a little bit of padding among them. And then for each and every component that you add on the page, you can specify how many columns this component is going to take, and you would say this for each and every size of device. So if my device takes the full screen, then it's going to take all the 12 columns, and then in that case I would specify it as a 12 column component. Now what we want to do here is we want to kind of create something a little bit like Pinterest. If you think about it, we're going to have a bunch of cards, and what I'm intending to do is really to have on very small screens to have one card shown. On a medium-sized screen, so something like a tablet, for instance, we're going to have 2, and for everything above that, we're going to limit it to 3. So we're going to have either 1 card, 2 cards, or 3 cards. And the way to do it in using the Bootstrap logic is really to define what the number of column is going to be for extra small devices, which is the equivalent of mobile, small devices, which is the equivalent of tablets, medium devices, which is the equivalent of landscape mode along with desktop, and then large devices, which is bigger screens. So for the small ones, we wanted to take 12. Okay, extra small, sorry. So whenever it's extra small, we don't need to define it, because by default it's always going to take the 12. So I'm not going to define anything for extra small. What I'm going to define is the small, because starting from the small, I want it to take 6 columns. Each card will take 6 columns. Okay, and whenever it's a medium and above, I want it to take 4 columns. So that would give us 3 cards on the page, and that ideally should do it. Great. Now we need a style for the card, and luckily styles.css does have that. It has a style called card, and I want that card to be white. Okay, and there is a set of colors already established in the styles.css, and color 0 happens to be the white color. And I also want all the content in the tile to have equally spaced margins and paddings. Okay, and these cards, just to make it easier, we want them all to have the same fixed height, and again, that is also something provided to us by the CSS. Great, so far we have a fixed height card that is white, and then the content in it is equally spaced. And just to add a little bit of fun to this whole thing, I want to drop shadow on the card, which means the card is going to have a little bit of a bevel applied to it. All right, so now that I have that, now we need to worry about the content of the card, and notice how I am indenting as we go. Okay, the indentation says that this is all part of these sections or these divs. Now I want to kind of drag your attention toward the syntax that I'm using. In a real HTML development, this statement would have been the following, and I'm going to write it down just for you to see how much space we're saving. It would have been div class card color 0 equally spaced, height fixed, drop shadow. Okay, and then you will have to close the divs, and so on and so forth. Okay, you get the point. And notice how many of these we have. Now in some cases the CSS doesn't might not behave correctly, especially if it's containers. So for example, wrapper and content section, both of them happen to be a container definition. They are defining a frame, so in that case they need to be separated into nested into separate nested divs. So it would have been, it would have been something like that. It would have been bounded, equally spaced, etc., etc. And then I would have needed to do this and create another div over here that is class content section. So in HTML I would have needed to do that. All right, so you get the point that it's it saves us a lot of code and time. And notice how it's very easy to just compound them by adding dots across the board. Okay, great. So now that we have that, the first item that I want to display in the card is going to be an image. Okay, we have, if you remember well, our database, we have something called image URL. So what I'm going to try to do here is add an image, and the card has in our styles, it does have a class called card image that is really coded this way, it's coded as a cover image, and it takes a background image over here. So I define the style as a background image. I'm applying a bit of CSS in there, and what I am going to do in here, I'm going to tell it to take $project, which is the project that we're going to get, and we're going to get the image URL attribute. Okay, and this should do it. So that is my card image. Great. Now let's add a little bit of spacing here, maybe spacer 1 or spacer 2, and this is just empty space just to separate the content. And now what we're going to do, we're going to add probably as a header too, we're going to add the title of the project. So let's apply some formatting to it. Some of the formatting that is giving to us in the style.css is the size of the text, and then we're going to say maybe it's semi-bold. And then the text color that I am going to use, I think it should be somehow a black, but let me validate this. And every time I do this, it's always good to go in and check things. So let me go validate what that color would be. It's a 4141, so yeah, it's a dark gray. Okay, so let's use that one. I will take it. Sorry for that. So let's go back to our index. So we'll choose text color 5, and then over here I don't want necessarily any paddings or margins applied, so I will reset that. We will validate if this is valid or not, but I don't want any spacing applied in here, and since we applied an equally spaced, it might have a little bit of indentation, so I will reset the margins just to make sure that there is no extra space up there. And what we want to do And don't forget, we need to put the equal. It should be right next to the tags. Notice if you put a space, it would take it as a string, as if it's part of the text that it's going to display. So it really needs to be connected to the tag. All right, and what we're going to do here is ideally we're going to show project title like that. But depending how the title is entered, some people might enter it in totally different ways. Ideally, I like the title to have a camel case, so the first letter is always uppercase, depending on how many words we have. So I'm going to set it all to lower first, so it's going to be all lower caps, and then I'm going to apply another function, and those are given by PHP. I'm going to say make the uppercase words, beginning of words, uppercase. So every word, every separate word that PHP detects will set it to will set its first letter to uppercase. Okay, so this function should do it for us. All right. So far, we seem to be okay. Let's see when we run the code if this is making any sense. All right, now we have the title. Maybe what we could do now is in a smaller version. So if I do small text, and let's apply a lighter gray, and I think that would be color 3, but let's go validate. Okay, so I'll take that one, copy it, go to style, and do text color 3, and that is, yes, okay, good. So it is a lighter gray that we're using up there. And what I am going to do with this gray, I am going to say, I'm going to put the category now. So I'm going to set it to maybe uppercase. That's neat. And I'm going to say $project category. Okay. So now we have the title. Under the title is category, and all of these are within the card. And my next thing, what can I do now? Now I need to add a block of text, and that block of text can vary in size, but we're fixed in how much we could do in the card. So what I am going to do is I'm going to add a container, and our containers in general are really the wrappers. Again, I'm going to reset the margin on that one because I wanted to take the full space, no padding involved. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a paragraph, and that paragraph we'll give it text color 5, which is again our dark gray. And in terms of size, I don't have to specify anything, so I will just for the sake of it, I'll put default text, which is another class. And over here, there is another function or another class in our CSS in styles that allow us, and I think it's called block with text. Okay, block with text. What it does is even if the text is longer, so the input is longer than what the space contains, it's going to be able to cut it off and only show a certain number of rows. Okay, that's what that CSS helps us do. So let me go check it out. Yes, so block with text, that's the name. And really what this and this and this and this is doing, well, this is the long one, but I'm going to take just regular block. It's allowing us to see almost 3 lines according to this calculation. And I think that would be enough for us. We'll see 3 lines, and if there is more, then it will hide the rest. But it hides it in a way that doesn't look like the text is completely cut off. Okay, it's kind of neat the way it does it. So let's use that one, and I make it block with text. And what we're gonna put in there is really our project short description. Remember, we're not going to put the long description in here. The long description will be in the details page if we get to it and we create it. But if not, we just want the short description at this stage. Great. So now let's go to the next item, but let me add again a spacer. Should I put 1? Let's put just 1 in here. Spacer 1 is a 1M. It's another unit, which is, about probably around maybe 8 to 10 pixels. So it's a neat separation. And now I'm going to do small text again, and it would be neat to know who or which user posted this particular project. Okay, just for the sake of it. If it's the same, we'll get rid of it later on, but it's good to have something like this. And the reason why I want to put this is because I want to link it a little bit to some of the learnings that we had in the previous sessions. And if you remember well, there's a way for us from the project to get the user, and that is by using our user function that we created last time. And what I want to get out of this is the ID. Okay, it's another neat way of doing things. Well, not the ID actually. I want to get the username. Okay. And last but not least, let's add maybe some notion of when this project was added, or when it was modified the last time. Now there is a core helper function, which is a very interesting, which maybe I could show to you directly in the code, or we could go to our lecture over here, and it's called get relative time. And the best way to get it is from the calligraphy course. So let's go to the calligraphy course, to the calligraphy documentation, sorry. So I will take you there, but you have a link directly in your in Udemy. So this is the calligraphy documentation. I'm going to go to the core helpers over here, which is this one. And if we go down, there is a time method called get relative time. And what get relative time, it's going to take a date time, just like it comes from the database, and it's going to give you a relative meaning for this. So if you did it 24 hours ago, or 3 hours ago, or 1 day ago, or 2 days ago, it does the calculation for you automatically. So let's go do that. We're going to use that function. We're going to say get relative time. And what does get relative time take? Take our date and time, and we're going to do it for the modified at. Okay, this is the one we want, and maybe end the holes with a little bit of spacing. All right, so this ideally should do it for our for at least the CSS, the mini CSS that we're writing for this course. So now let's go back to project controller. Okay, now so far, if you noticed, we're only displaying one card, it seems like. Okay, and let's keep it this way. And I want to keep it this way just to make sure that the layout is fine, and then we'll figure out how we can iterate in order to get all the projects that are in here. So what I'm going to do now, we need to return a view from this. And what is our view? Our view is in showcase index. So I'm going to say showcase/index, and I'm going to give it as attributes. We're going to give it project like this. And then we're going to get the first element 0, just to begin with. We're just going to send 1 in the beginning. And here we go. All right. So let's go and, so that seems to be fine. So now all we need to do is go and test and see if it works. Oh, we see something. All right. We do see a card. Hallelujah. There is a little bit of, we need to add some spacing maybe over here, so we will do that. And this is probably a large screen, so I believe we can fit 1, 2, and 3. That seems about right. So if I reduce it now, ideally at some point I should be able to see 2. Here we go. So in this case, ideally if I had 2, I would see them half-half. So that's our medium size. And then if I go all the way down to a small screen, and I go even deeper, this is the equivalent of mobile, then in that case it would show me only 1 card and the rest would go underneath. All right, so this seems to be working. Now of course we don't see any image in here because there's nothing in our database that makes sense to HTML to display. So maybe what we could do is we could go to phpMyAdmin and try to replace this with an image URL. What we could do, at least for the time being, is go to Google, maybe search for images or something like that. I don't know, let's pick one that could be of a decent size. So that's a 1024, yeah, sure. All right, let's take this one over here, and it doesn't really matter because it's a responsive image, so it will find the right fit. And we're going to open this image in a new tab and make sure that it's not a transparent image, which will. So I'll copy this whole URL, and I am going to paste it directly into PHP Okay, so now when we do that, if I go back to my calligraphy page and I refresh, ideally I should see some form of an image in there, and here we go. Okay, so it looks quite neat, at least for the purpose of this course. And let's see how it would react. So this is now in 3. Notice how the image is responsive, and then when I go all the way down, I see it in full screen mode. All right. So that gives us a little bit of data to play with. Now let's go back to our code, and as you can see, so far we were only displaying one image, and really, one card or one project, and really the purpose is to show everything. So what we need to do here is, instead of passing to the view just one project, we need to pass it the whole list of projects that we get. Okay, and now in that case, what we're going to do is we're going to set all the projects, we're going to send them to the view. So now the view, what it's going to receive an array. So now if I try and run this, it will definitely tell us that we have a problem. Now this problem is because of something else in here. It's going to give us another type of problem, which is something around the views, that the view cannot be read, obviously, because we don't have anything called project anymore. Now we replaced project with projects, and even then it is an array, so it can no longer read that syntax. So we need to fix that, and the way to do it is when we are on the puck page. Now we are going to let the puck page iterate through the different project. So the loop and the iteration is no longer going to happen on the controller side of things. We're going to try and do it directly over here in Pug. And what we want is we want to replicate this piece over and over. Okay, so how do we do that? And here's how we're going to do it. There is the iteration mechanism, or the loop mechanism, that you can read in the documentation of Pug, would tell you each $project, and that would be the variable that we will be using in the collection, which is $projects. I want to do this, and ideally this will loop for as many projects as we have. So let's go take a look now. Let's add more. Let's go back to localhost phpMyAdmin, and maybe what we could do now is just copy this one, and let's do it right. Let's say this is test2. We're copying another one of those. Let's say the category is test, and we're going to say this is a short description. Okay, and I'm missing an S here, and then this is a long description. And let's keep the same image for the time being. Notice how for user ID, since it's a foreign key, it gives us a drop down to pick other users if there are any other ones. In this particular case, we only have one. So great, and let's create that item. So now I have 2. Ideally, when I refresh, I'm going to be able to see two items. Okay, let's add a 3rd one and a 4th one just to see how the page reacts, and I'm going to probably just do them like that. Okay, we can clean the database later, but this will give us an idea on how the page is laid out. Okay, so it's going to put 3 per row, and then if you notice, when we go down, now at some point it's going to put 2 per row, and then we go all the way down, and then we're going to have all in one row. So we see 1 card per row. So that, I think, covers it. What we need to do now, obviously, we do not have any valuable projects just yet, so we can clean up the database if we want to, but let's keep it for the time being. Our immediate next step now is really to go and create a new form. And that form, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to try and add more challenge to ourselves, and we are going to create one form that does the three things. So we're going to post, we're going to delete, and we are going to edit. Okay, and what we're going to experiment with these forms, these HTML forms. HTML forms are usually meant to process only HTTP methods that are of type POST. So what we're going to learn when we're creating these forms is how to spoof that method. And that word spoofing is just to say that we could kind of fake and turn the post that comes out of HTML. We're going to trap it, and instead of calling a post, we're going to switch it to a different HTTP method, which will be a put or a delete. Okay, why do we want to do this? Because we want to use the correct HTTP methods for the right actions that we want to take, and this will allow us as well to test out different types of routes in here. Instead of just using get across the board, we might want to use the post and the put and the delete. Okay, so we're gonna do all three of them using one UI. So let's go ahead and create, under showcase, create a new file, and let's call it add.pug. Okay. Now, our add.pug is similarly to the index one. It is still going to extend layout blocks. All right, and it is also, this is not the right one at all. I'm not sure how I landed on that one. So let's go back to index. Let's open it, and let's open add. We have that, and well, let's have the controller. Okay, so I have them open here. So and let's take the spacer and the block. Not here, but rather here. And the first thing that we need to show in here, we are going to create a form. So how do we create a form now with Pug? It's an HTML structure just like all the others. It's always good when you're creating a form to give it an ID name. So let's call it over here a showcase form. Okay. I personally prefer it to have an ID, but again, it's not necessary. And then every form needs to have a method, and by default, or not by default, but the method that that most browsers support are the post method. So we're gonna do a post by default, and since we have images and stuff like this, then there's always an encryption type that needs to be included, and this is a basic HTML really, and we need to get it as a multi-part, and then it has to be form data. Okay, this is really how you declare a form in order for you to have a more elaborate inputs, if you will, like pictures, for instance. All right, so now that we have a form, there is something called the cross-site forgery, which in Caligraphy and in any other system that has a little bit of protection on the forms, we need to make sure that the form that is making the request is the same as the one that started the session. Okay, why do we do this? Because sometimes hackers can always find a way to fake certain forms and to make them act as if it's the service calling them, and you know, they could kind of hack the system. So in order to avoid this from happening, and to avoid that, you know, certain attacks force certain actions to take place on the server, Caligraphy does provide you with a fantastic way of doing it, and what you can see in the reference in here is a contrast. So it's showing you how you would do it ideally in a world like HTML, and how you would do it in a world like Pug. So in the world of HTML, the concept of cross-site forgery is really to add the token, and that token at some point will get checked on the server side, which which every server will need to validate that there's a token associated with the form that comes, and that token does have a meaning, and that meaning is the server will take care, the programming piece on the server will take care of it, and then of course it will either let you go through or not. The way it's done in Pug is really through this command equals CSRF, and it will output this code for you. Okay, now Caligraphy knows how to handle this, so you don't have to worry about any of that. You don't have to do any checking. Caligraphy is doing it for you, and Caligraphy is going to go and not only check the value of the token for you, but also it will give you the right output in case there's a cross-site request forgery. All you need to do when it gets to Pug is to really add this statement in your form. So when I do this, now I am sure that I avoided the forgery. Great. So now that we have our form, we now need inside the form we need the wrapper, and let's in this particular case do the same. Do maybe the same thing and add a card as well. And that card, you know, will just give us like a white background to work with on the form. So we're gonna make it color 0, just like we made the other ones, and in this particular case maybe we give it a larger size than the one we gave over there, so it's still bounded, but let's say it's bounded extra large, and then so this determines the size for it, and just like we did in the other one, it's also a content section in here. Don't forget, well, at least I won't forget, I want it to be equally spaced, similarly to what we did over there. Okay, anything else, let's say, that we need to add in here? Do you want the drop shadow? We'll put the drop shadow just to be consistent across the board, and maybe we want that card to be centered. Okay, otherwise, so there's all these are classes that are in the CSS, so the more you read about the CSS, you get a hang of it. So now we want the card to be centered, but of course the form that's in there, we want at least the labels and the components to be left aligned within the card. So I will probably add another div here that says put it to the left. Okay, great. Now. Maybe let's say before we do this, so in Caligraphy overall, and let me show you a little bit under the modules. There is something called messaging. So there is an inclusion potential that we can have, which is the messaging component. The messaging component is really that validation that is on the top that either returns errors or success messages and things like that. So it's good to have it, and I like to have it usually on top of the card. So maybe what we could do is check if there is an error, and we'll define what error is later on. But if there is an error, I would like us to include the module messaging, okay, and then we'll see how to deal with that whenever we work with it. Okay, all right. So that is one piece to the puzzle. So at least we have messaging up there. Maybe we add a little bit of spacing in here, and now we're gonna start, identifying the different attributes that we want to add. Okay, so usually in HTML in general, and more particularly in Bootstrap, there are form groups. So every combination of label and a component is a form group. Okay, and within that form group, we are gonna have, like I mentioned, we're gonna have a label, and let's put for our first label, let's call it let's start with the long description, maybe, or the title, whatever you guys want. Let's do the title. Okay, so let's say it's labeled for title, and then the class for it would be, in this case, we're just going to put text color 5. Okay, and then it's a required field, so let's do this title like that. So this is the label. Now I need, we need to create the input for it. So the input is a type text, right? And the name is equal to title, and the label for and the name here need to match each other. Again, this is more HTML than anything else. And then we are going, so yeah, is it a required field? Let's put it as a required by saying it's a required. That would help us, or Bootstrap would validate also that data for us directly on the UI side, so through either JavaScript or CSS. And then all this is Bootstrap material, so when we say form control and input default, it would give us the default text box that is provided by Bootstrap. And then there's always it's always interesting to add a placeholder. Let me put the required at the end. Okay, so that class, and then a placeholder over here is equal. This is just a placeholder text when no enter the title or something like that. It's a placeholder text that goes inside inside the text field. Okay, and now you can add, if you want, max length and min length and things like that. But let's not worry about it at this stage of the game. Or actually, let's do it. So let's say max length for a title. Let's say it's 18 or 20 characters. 18 seems like a reasonable amount. So this is our form our form group. Now, what we need to add is specifically in the way you see it on websites today. When there is an error, it's always good to show the error and to identify what input caused the error. So what we need to add in order to have that, and I'll show you later how it's executed. But what we need to do is if we have an error given, and that error we're going to bring it as an array, and that array can take title, and we'll see this more when we do the validation. Okay, so if this is set, then we are going to add a small paragraph in here that will have a type class error, which is defined in the CSS. And what we're going to output is going to be errors title. All right. This is a small neat feature. If we don't have it initially, it's no big deal. And again, we need to make this required. All right. So that gives us the title. Great. Now, once we're done with the title, let's do the description. Let me just close my emails. Otherwise, we are gonna hear a lot of sounds. So let me copy this. Okay, this is one form. Now this is another form group, and what we're gonna do in here is really going to be let's start with the short description. And the short description, unlike this one, is going to be a text area. Okay, so what is a text area? So first, let me do this short description, and it's a short description over here, and then same thing. If there is an actually, we might need to treat it differently. I'll come back to it, but the name here is short description. So let me just do it like that. Short description. Okay, and now we said it's not an input. Okay, it's a text area, so it acts a little differently than an input. And what we're gonna do in here, it's also a class form control, similarly to the other one, and then we are gonna take the name. Sorry, even though we typed it before, type it again. So it's short description. Always good to add an ID as well. I usually give them the same name as the name. In a situation like this, whenever you have text areas, it's always good to determine the maximum size, which happens let's put 200 in our case because that's the one we have. And in text areas in general, you need to specify how the size of it out of the box by default, and the way to define the size of it vertically is really by defining the number of rows that you want the user to see. So let's see, it's about four rows, and then again it has a placeholder. The placeholder can be something like what is this project about? Okay, what is this project about? Something like that, and then it is the required field. Okay, and now this text area, what we're gonna put is if, well, let's not do it just yet. There's no value. Okay, and are we set with this short description over here? Looks about right. Okay, for as long as it says short description across the board. Okay, good. So now we have a short description. Description, believe it or not, is the same, except the length is bigger. So now let's put description or long description, and you know what I'm going to do. Okay, let's copy this here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and maybe give it. Actually, it has no maximum length, just like that. And if this one, let's say we give it 6, and this one we give it 3. Okay, let's double them up. Something of that nature. And over here it might say give us more details about your project. Something of that nature. So we got the short description, we got the long description. Now we still need the category. For category, just for the time being, let's add it as a text field. Let's not get into a drop down yet. This might be a nice exercise to do. And let's say call this category. And then we're going to put category here, category, which might not lead to any error really, but just to be on the safe side, category, enter category name, maximum length, maybe we could go up to 20, maybe it's too short. How about this? Is it required? Sure, let's make it a required field, and I believe this covers it. All right, so far it seems to be going well. The last piece that we need is a little different than others, is the picture. Okay, so we again, Bootstrap comes prepackaged with something for us to use, which is great news. And over here, let's say it's our image URL. That's the way I like to call it. And then it's going to be upload photo. Okay, if it's set image URL, and I'll explain all this when we talk about validation. And over here, it's no longer a text area, but rather a short description, text area. Yeah, that's right. It's an input this time, but it's a different type of input. Let's give it an ID. Let's call it image URL, just like the name is also an image URL. Yep. URL, what else do we need? It's a class, and again, form control, and then input default. Okay, and then the difference between this and any other one is the fact where we say that it accepts image / anything. Okay, so this is the type of file that we wanted to accept, and the type, which is going to make the whole difference, we'll put it in the beginning, is file. Okay, that's how Bootstrap knows to give you the pieces that you need to allow people to upload a file from the computer. All right, so now that this is said, ideally ideally, I am guessing our form for a post is done. That's what it feels like. And it's add.pub. So now what we need a controller to be able to display this form for our user. And that controller is different from the logic that handles it after you submit. So now we need to add another one over here. And maybe what we could do is separate project controller. Let's call it page controller. Okay, let's put our controllers that are handling the views, let's put them under, no, do I want to do that? Yeah, sure, I mean we can, yeah. The ones where we are displaying things to the user, we'll put them under page controller. So let's create a public function. And this one, what is it? It's really, it's our form. So it's our showcase form, like that, okay? Great. What we're going to do, all it does is return view, and it's showcase slash add. And I'm guessing this is it. There's nothing to give at this stage of the game. It's just an empty form, and we just want to display it. So if I go back here, just making sure we got all the pieces right. Okay. That seems about right. Now we need a web. And what we're going to do over here is we are going to add under this. Remember, the order is important. All the views will be under this, okay? So right get, and we're going to say, if I do /new, how about that? And we're going to call page controller, and it's going to be at, I already forgot the name, showcase form. Okay, let's see. Now if I go here and I do /new, we have problems. And the problem is, of course, here. Alright, we need to add $sign somewhere. Where is it? Add them. $sign. How come we don't have a $sign? Dollar, and dollar. And I hope I got them. There's one more. Dollar. Let's see. Alright, we are seeing a form, and there's something that we don't like, which is all the titles are being centered. Why is that? Because this is a great example where indentation, if it's not happening correctly, so we want all this to be indented under the div horizontal left, okay? This is exactly what we wanted to avoid, but we ended up seeing it in action, which is great. Okay, so now here is our form, but of course we don't have a submit button because, believe it or not, we didn't add it. So that's one more item to add in this whole thing is really our submit button. And for that one, we don't need a form group anymore. We probably just need maybe a little bit of spacing. So I'm going to add a spacer 2 here, and I'm going to say input, and the type of it is obviously a submit if you know HTML. And what we want it to be a button, and everything that I'm writing in the class right now is really what comes with Bootstrap. So it's a button primary. Let's give it a medium size, and then it will be a button block. Okay, button block because we want it to take the full available space dedicated to it, and the type would be equal to submit in this particular case. And let's see, is that all? What is the submit value at this stage? We don't need to give it a submit value because it's gonna submit it. I don't want it. The submit value is really the name of the button. What is it going to be? Okay, so initially, even though this form is about all of them combined, we'll do it later, how to change the name of the buttons based on whether we are saving or or creating for this particular case. Let's make it a create, okay? And then we'll make the changes later when we turn this form into also an editing form, because right now what it's going to end up doing is it's going to be creating. All right, here we see our create button. Fantastic. Can I do create? What happens? All right, now these are the validations that come out of the box with Bootstrap. Let's pick a file, for example. Let's say it's let me go here. We can go to different places, but let me go here. Just grab a bunch of files that we could use. For example, okay, if I do this, you know, it tells me what the file is. I could add a title, but so far, what I want you to know is when we are submitting, nothing is happening because we don't know where this whole thing is going, where this whole thing is going. So what we need to do now, that is really the best part, and now I'm trying to figure out whether I did the right choice of putting the pay under page controller. I might not have done the right choice. So let me switch back here. Okay. No, actually, it doesn't matter. All right. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. All right, here's my dilemma. My dilemma is when you hit create, it's going to submit it to the same page, but it's going to submit it as a post request to localhost showcase/new. Okay, so what we need now, we need the route that is a post route. Okay, and it's going to say route, but instead of saying get, it's going to say a post. And when that post is new, we are going to have it go to project controller this time. Okay, and which action is it going to be? It's going to be add project. All right, so let's do it. It's add project, add project, add project, add project, like that. Okay, close the quote. So I am in page controller. Page controller shows me this form. When I start filling it out and I hit the create, it's going to generate a post request to the same address. But that post request to the same address will take me to project controller at project. I get to project controller at project, and what's going to happen in here, it's going to get all the parameters, and ideally getting the post request. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dump them, okay, in order for you to see what the parameters are going to be, and you're going to see that Caligraphy immediately grabs these parameters for you as needed. It seems like I no longer have battery on my mouse, so I will put it to charge, and I will use my laptop in the meantime. So, all right, so here we go. This is dump the parameters. So let's do this. Now we're gonna hit enter again to refresh. Great. Now we're gonna add a fake title. Let's call it title 1, category 1, description 1. Oops. Description short, full description, and we're gonna just add a file for the sake of it. Okay. And I am going to do create. And now we're dumping the values. What are we getting out of this whole thing? We're getting the token, which is what the CSRF gave us. We're getting the title, we're getting the category, we're getting the short description, and we're getting the description. Fantastic. So what's happening in here is we are getting all the parameters, which is great. The only one we're not getting, if you notice, is the image. Why? Because the image is not really a parameter. The image uses something else, and we need to grab it as well. Okay, so the only piece that will not work in this is going to be image URL and obviously user ID, because by default it's going to set it to to the user, and we'll fix that later, but it's going to set it to user 1. For image URL, we need to get the file from the request. So how do we do this? We do this request, okay, and then file. Is it file or files? We'll figure that out. It's files. So let's go to the documentation again, and over here we go to request. We go to request methods, and the request method that will give us this is files plural. Okay, this will give us the file. But what are we going to do with the file? And this is really the best, I think, the best part of the game. So now our image URL, we don't once we get the file is somehow stored in a temporary memory for the browsers browser to know that the user uploaded the file, but it's not yet on the server. So we need a way to bring it to the server. So what we're going to say is if file, okay, what we are going to do, if there is a file, we are going to use one of our core features or core methods, which is called upload file. Okay, an upload file is going to take exactly what comes out of file. All right, and this, what it's going to return, it's going to return image URL for us. So if the file succeeds in uploading, automatically we get an image URL. You know, if you were to write this code on your own, it would have been a nightmare, okay? Calligraphy does it in a beautiful way for you, and everything that you need to do now is check set, meaning do we have a value in image URL, and if it's set, then get that value, and if it's not set, then just put HTTP like that, okay? All right, so here's the beauty of this whole thing. Now, the image URL, when it gets uploaded, it's going to go put it under public upload. So we need to make sure that public upload is a writable directory or a writable folder. We will do this in a while just to make sure that it's working okay. So let's go ahead. Let's go to your root directory. In this case, it's showcase. Okay, we're going to go to public, and if you do ls-la, if you look at uploads, right now uploads is only in a read format. So what you need to do, you need to say sudo chmod -r recursively 777 uploads. That would give the full permission to the uploads directory. You will enter your password without making mistakes, and then ls-la. Now you see that uploads is in a full read and write capabilities. Okay, when this whole thing is full and doesn't have dashes, that means everybody is allowed to write to this file. Great. So now we know that at least we are able to upload to the server. Now let's go back to our page controller, our add.pug, okay, and I think now we can run it. Let's just give it a shot and see what it does. So let's go back to new. Did something happen? Nope, maybe it forgot the data. Right, okay. Let's say this is test 3. Category is test. This is our first upload. Will it work? Let's add a file. Let's say it's this one. All right, so what does it say? Too few arguments. Oh yes, okay, so let's go back to the code a little bit. What we have in here, the files function needs to take the name of the attribute that is in the form. So let me go back to the form a little bit. So under add, really the file is being uploaded under a name called image URL. So what we need to do when we're in the project controller is really to make sure that we're fetching this particular variable. And now what we're going to do, because if you follow this controller over here, after it adds the project, what it's going to do is it's going to dump a dollar save. So what we want to do is potentially we definitely want to save, but it would be cool if we immediately redirect to our route. So basically redirect to our home. Like this, we get to see all the projects, the list of the complete projects. So if we add another one, then we will immediately see it. So let's go and try and test this whole thing out. So let's go back to our form, do a new. And now we're going to say, we're going to have to recreate another one. I'm going to say the category is test, and this is a short description, and then this is a long description. Okay, and then let's choose just any image right now, and let's hit create, and hopefully here we go. So this is our new image, and we could, you know, keep on adding stuff in here. Let's add another one just for the sake of it. Let's say this is our test 4, and then this is test, and then short description, this is description, etc., blah blah blah. And we will copy the same one over here. This one we're not worried about because we're not displaying it anyways. And then let's do this. All right. Okay. So this is really doing what we wanted. So our new, which is using a post, is actually working the intended way. Let's go back to the code now and see how we could apply the same thing for the edit, but at the same time for the delete. And perhaps it would be good to start with the delete. So let's do that. Okay, hold on a second over here. Let me go back to my add file. All right. So how can we make changes to this form to allow it to do two things? Let's start maybe with the delete, because the delete is slightly easier than the update. So what we need to do is when it's a delete, we want to somehow, there's no form really. The only component within the form is really the button itself. And we want that button to initiate a delete request. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the HTML form only provides you with the method post or get. Okay, it does not allow you to have any other method in there, at least not in the older versions of HTML that is still supported by many browsers. So what we need to do is add over here a small check that says if it's, and we'll define what that variable is, but what we're going to say if this variable is kind of, let's say if it's a delete, then actually no, we don't need it at this form level. Let's put it a little bit further down. Okay, so at the very end, because probably what we want, let's add the delete a delete button somehow down, yeah, down there. So outside, entirely outside of this form, we will create another form, and we are going to say if it's put, then we are gonna do a form, and the form is gonna have again an ID. Let's say this is our delete form in this particular case, and then this is a method that will say it is a post. Remember, HTML only allows us to do a form post, so this is a multi-part and it's a form data. Okay, and then within the form, what we're going to do in here, we're going to say there is a method which you can find in the core helpers of Caligraphy that allows you to spoof this method and replace it with a delete HTTP request. Okay, and this is the way to do it. You call the method field and you put a delete in there, and then we still need the CSRF, and then after that we will add our button, which happens to be of class button. Sorry. button, and let's add it in a link format when we're on this page, and I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing in a while and why I put the put up there, because and then it's a button block, and the reason why I'm doing this is because we want the delete to be part of the editing form and not necessarily the creation form. So we will do that together soon, and the value is going to be delete post. Okay, delete the post. All right, and maybe we can add over here some form of a spacer if need be. Now let me go back, because we're gonna do it all in one shot, and really what's gonna make the distinction between the two is how we call these methods from the routes. Okay, and based on how we call it from the routes, then we will display the right format. So this delete button is only gonna appear if we are sending a variable that says that this is a put. A put form. Okay, so if it's an editable form, if not, then it's not going to send it. So when we do create, nothing should change. And we're going to do the same thing over here on top, and we're going to say if it's a put, then we're going to spoof, and we're going to say it's a method field, and this time it's going to be a put because we want to switch it to a put. Method, a put HTTP method. Okay, and ideally, the differences now. What other differences can we have between an edit and a create? The create is going to be probably empty. It's not going to read any values in there. Right? So now what we need to add something to this form so that if there is a value, we want to read this value. So how do we do that? Okay, and in here, wherever we have those inputs, what we need to do is we need to add some value to these inputs that will take it from the value if the value already exists. So what we're gonna do, if this has a value, just like that, and then we're gonna say, let's, for the time being, maybe let me see if we need to add any variables or not, but really what we need is, we're going to put it like that, and we need to have to use interpolation for that, and this is the title. So let's do we need the title? Yes, so let's put title over here like that. Okay, and then over here let's put, and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing in a while, but over here let's put, where is it, here, value equal to category, and let's put $category like that, and then here is a text area. Text area is treated slightly differently than others because it doesn't take a value, but rather it we need to put it with an equal like that. And what we're going to say is if a poster does have a short description like that, we can use syntactic sugar here. Otherwise, don't put anything. And similarly here, if it has a description, so if our project has a description, then get it, otherwise don't display anything. All right. For the files, I would suggest, at least in the beginning, and that would be a nice exercise for you to do later on. But what we could say is, if it's a put, then we are not gonna suggest image URL at all. We could do it this way. Yeah, maybe let's do it this way. So we're gonna say only show this if it's not a put. Okay, we're not gonna allow maybe users to change the file, even though we could. But for the time being, let's leave it this way. Okay, so this will only appear if it's not a put. So in the case of a create, it will appear. All right, let's see if our create got disturbed by any of that. Ideally, it shouldn't. Okay, as you can see, it didn't get disturbed. Oh, we're not in the new, but let's do the new. Maybe it's going to complain about some variables. Yes, it will. Is it about the variable? Yes. Okay. So let's do here if dollar project title exists, use it. Otherwise, don't use it. And now it might complain about this syntax, but let's try it out, and I'll tell you in a while why it might complain about it. Right. So whenever you have you are adding a syntax and interpolation, it's actually not Pug doesn't read them well. Okay, let's try the different ones. Yep, it's not reading them. Why? Because it's always gonna think that it's either a string or it never executes it as a command. Now there is, but maybe if we do this, it will be able to read it. I will give this another shot, and if not, then we'll do it in a different way, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so it's not able to read it whenever you include it in here. So how do we go around that when Puck cannot read certain variables? There is a generic way of calling any PHP code, okay, and that is by putting a dash. So in this particular case, we're going to create a variable. We're going to call it title, and we're going to say if $poster title, why am I saying poster? Project title exists, then take it, and if not, keep it empty. And we're going to do the same thing for category. Okay, so if project category exists, like that, then take it, and if it doesn't exist, then don't do anything with it. All right. Now maybe the best way, because this right, title and category, if it exists, let's give this a shot. It might complain about it not being null, but this we will solve it differently. All right. So now ideally it should not complain about the variables. And here we go. So now for our new, if you noticed, nothing changed for us, and that is exactly what we wanted so far. Now you're not going to see anything about the put yet, because we need to define what that one is. Now there is something else that probably we want to change. Let's call this save. Okay, why? Because we want it to work either way, whether it's for the creation or the put. So like this, we don't make it more complex. We just say either submit or save, and maybe that would work for us. Okay, now there is something else that we need to do. The page is always submitting, and this would help you significantly understand the differences between the HTTP methods. When we're in the browser, it's always the URI that is being called is always /new. Okay, now when I am doing a post, it's doing a post request on the new, just like we saw. Now what we wanted to do is we want to define what the put request is going to do in here, and what the delete request on this is going to do. So now we need to create new routes in our web.php, but these are still /new, except that it's a different method applied to them. So we have a put new, but this one is going to call a different controller. So now it's going to say project controller, and now we're going to say it is going to be update project, and route delete. It's also going to be like that, and now this one is going to call project controller at delete project. Now the problem with this is now we no longer have an ID with this format, right? Because ideally the way this needs to work is, if you remember our update and our delete, they need an ID to work. So we need to add ID here, just like that. Okay, just like that. And now let's go take a look at our functions. Where is it? Project controller. Okay. Now remember our page controller. Our page controller is only considering /new, and it's going to give it the showcase form. Okay, we need to create another route in our page controller, which is id/new, that would give us exactly the same thing. So let's do it. We need public function, another route. Let's go back here. The web. I said it's another controller, but in reality it's another route. So what we need to do here is get /id, /new, or call it edit. Okay, it makes it a lot easier. And we're going to be calling page controller, and we're going to call exactly the showcase form. All right, and now. So now when I am calling this URI, it is going to give me the form again. And now these no longer work, because now these need to do, they need to be /added, because now I am putting into this URI and I am deleting onto this URI. Now I am guessing that it will work, and it will work just fine. And you don't have to worry here, because this is a get, and this is a put, and this is a delete. So it seems to be more than okay. Now let's organize it in a way so that we don't get confused, because it could get confusing. So here's what we're going to do. This is our add new routes, and those two will help us do that. And what we have here is our edit routes, edit and delete, because they are part of the same page. Edit and delete routes. Okay, and you will notice that this is a get, and the put on it will update the project, and the delete would delete the project. So let's go take a look at project controller just to make sure that our functions will work properly. So here's my update. What am I doing in my update? I am getting the project, similarly to what we did earlier. The only difference in here is that our image URL now is no longer valid, because we're never going to submit it. Okay. No, that could work. Actually, we're never going to submit it. It's going to be empty, and when it's empty, we'll take the existing one. So this might work. And user ID will always take the one that was given by default. All right, we can live with that one. And then instead of dumping, what we're going to do is we're going to do this save project. Okay, and then we are going to do the same thing. We're going to redirect to this. And if there is an error for the time being, let's just keep it as an echo. What you could do is return another view as well, or return a view with an error message integrated. So we won't worry about this just yet. Now in this one, all we need to do is this delete, and then we're going to redirect immediately after. All right, let's see. This was our big challenge. So let's see now, if I do /edit, what do I get? I have the save. This looks about right, but I'm not getting any values in here. I am not getting any values. And I wish, if we go to page controller, the reason why we're not getting any values is because we are not returning the view. We need to return the data to this over here. Okay. So what is missing from our page controller, and here's what we're going to do. Okay, now follow me closely. We're going to have to associate this view, this function, with projects. And then projects. because what we are gonna do is we're gonna do $this find. Okay, it's gonna take it from the URI if there is a URI, and if there is no URI, then it will be a new. Okay, so we're gonna say $find the project, this dot find. If $project, if you find the project, then return view. We still want the same view. So okay, add, but we are going to give it the project, otherwise there is nothing to read. So we're going to say it's going to take project and then $project. Otherwise, we are going to return a new form, which is empty data. Okay. The other way of doing all this is to do the following. $project, let's try it first, and then we'll optimize the code. Always do this. Try your things out and then optimize the code. So now notice how I already got title not entered, category not entered. Now I don't have any value in short description. We'll go validate why we have that. And ideally, since this is an edit, we should not see the upload photo. So let's see what errors we have in the bug. And really, it's because it's the dollar put in here that we haven't given any value to it. So what we need to do also as part, let's fix it one problem at a time. Go back to project controller over here, and now what I am going to do is I'm going to say put is true, because we do want it in an edit format. So let's do it. Now it disappeared. Why? Because what I said in here, and let's go to the add, is if it's not a put, don't show me the image URL, because we don't want people to upload an image. So it hit it when we said that it's going to be a put. And notice how, well, we are not able to see this. We'll figure that out in a while. So if $put, meaning it's true, then give me another form. Is that a delete somewhere? Oh, it's here. All right, here's our delete. It is very, very, very down there. That's okay. We'll we'll test it out. Now let's check why short description is not showing up. It is saying $poster short description. Poster again. Me and poster. All right. Now this should work. I should see at least a value in here. And here we go. All right. So this is our value. Now, that being said, if I make a change, ideally it should work. Let's give it a shot. Yay. Just to identify it. Do we have a yay somewhere? No, we don't. Is it in the title? Yes, it is. So we were not able to update. So we'll figure that out from the project controller. So definitely something is happening in here. Let's see, title. Ideally, it should be able to do it. Let's make sure our route is right. So public function update project, when we're doing a put, yep. So let's see if it's getting into the function to begin with. So what we could do here is dump project just to test it out, and then we exit. It's always good to check whether, so let's do one edit. We don't have a 1 anymore. Our 1 disappeared. Did it do a delete? Did we make a mistake of saying this is a delete? Did we say delete anywhere? Yeah, but it's not in the right. Oh. Is that the problem? We need to make sure that this is aligned with form. Otherwise, maybe it deleted it by mistake. So let me, well, it's not a mistake really. It's more of an indentation problem. Let's make sure that whether it got deleted or not. Yeah, indeed. So we actually performed delete by mistake. All right, let's check it out again. You see how indentation is very important. So what it was saying is over here we said this is our form, but then it was considering that this form over here is another declaration of it, and it was replacing it. It wasn't considered part. It was considered part of this form, and therefore it was completely messing the request. So now what we will do is by indenting it out, those two forms became two separate things. I am guessing that this is the problem. So let's do to edit, because we don't have a 1 anymore. Apparently we got rid of it. Okay, so this is okay. So let's say this is test2, yay. Now save. Now it's dumping, so it's going into this. This seems okay. We're not doing a delete anymore. So now at least we know that by doing it again, now it's a matter of, do we have a yay? We have a yay. Congratulations, everybody is happy. Here we go. We just saw how to do the edit, and now I am quite certain that the delete works. So let's try it again. Let's do for and edit. Hopefully there is a 4. Yes, there is a 4. Let's go down here, do a delete, and let's see if our 4 disappears. And yes, it did. Okay, let's make sure it did from the database as well. Here's our number 4 is gone. So this is great. I mean, I apologize if there's a lot of back and forth, but as I said earlier, we are doing the project live, and debugging is really part of programming, and it needs to be in our way of thinking. So I'm hoping that everything that I'm doing in here is helping you somehow, at least think about how to debug a code, and specifically a code in Caligraphy. So let's do maybe one last thing over here before we end our session. Now, probably we're not going to create a navigation and things like this, but it would be cool if at least when I click on one of these cards to get me to the edit form. Okay, so the way to do it, and that would just accelerate the process, is really to do it directly from the index.pug, which is over here. And what we want really is we want to add an href on the card itself. So we're going to do a, which is the equivalent of the href. Now the big thing is what goes into it up there. There is a $home variable that always gives us the original home URL, being localhost / basically the root. Okay, and really what we want is every time that we click on this card to go to the home, but we want to append to it the ID of the project. So what we're going to do is we're going to say yes, it's our $home, and we're going to add to it project and then project ID, and don't forget to indent, and ideally this should give us the link. So let me refresh. Okay, But yes, so we do not have a page. We need to do the edit to it. Sorry. So let's go here now, refresh. Now if I hover over, notice that and note that we do not need we do not need to put a slash, otherwise it's going to complain about it. If you look at the URL at the bottom left of the page, you will see it's going to take me to showcase to edit. If I click on it, it's going to immediately take me to the edit of that page. And here we go. And now I can do whatever I want. If I don't want to do anything, I just save and go back and nothing changes. Okay, let's test it out. I click on it. Instead of saying this is a short description, we just changed it. Save. We just changed it. There's no point of doing the long description because the long description does not appear anywhere on our card. But here we go. I mean, we were able very somehow to have a delete, an edit, an add along with their appropriate forms. Now, of course, there's always debugging to be done as we go through the different things. The part that I wanted to get to, but I believe we already spent a lot of time on this, is the validation. We will do it more thoroughly whenever we talk about authentication, because there's no way for us to do authentication without validating. Okay, so we will keep the validation piece to our next session. With that, I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I hope that you enjoyed the code that we built. UI is always full of debugs here and there, okay, but this is part of life, specifically if you want to get into the development world. With that, I wish you a fantastic day, and hopefully the next session will help you do some more powerful things with calligraphy. Have a great day.